any parent who is wanting or, has gotten that calling, right, to go on this path of breaking the cycle, of doing better because you know better, that relationship with their inner child is everything. When you're able to offer compassion to your inner child, that's when you'll be able to offer it to the child in front of you.
Goosebumps, bitches. Yeah. Damn, let's talk some shit.
It's Polly Siegel
And Victoria Aaron.
two licensed therapists who've spent way too much money on degrees, certifications, and trainings. We both love what we do and couldn't imagine working in any other profession. But we're forced to be serious all the time, and that gets boring. Shit Talking Shrinks discusses important mental health topics, the human experience, and society at large, while poking fun along the way. It won't be all fun and games because after every episode, you'll walk away with tangible tools to navigate life more effectively.
We love a tangible tool.
Hello, everyone. We have such an awesome guest today who is joining us from India. So that is the most dedication Shit Talking Shrinks has received thus far across the world. We have a beautiful guest. And let me be honest, the time difference was not convenient for her. So the fact that you are here, we are beyond grateful.
Yes, it's late as fuck over there, isn't it, Garima?
It is. It's 10:30 in the night, and I know that it's like 12 in the afternoon for you all, but truly I am grateful. I'm grateful to be here.
Welcome. Introduce yourself.
I'm an emotional wellness consultant. I did the integrative trauma somatic therapy training program from the Embody Lab. The National Institute for Clinical Application of Behavioral Medicine has many courses, and a specific one that I've worked with is, working with the pain of abandonment. And there's, to be honest, in this journey, the more that I think of, how do I want to introduce myself, the more I tend to sort of fall short of words because I'm like, we're complex beings, and then we're always absorbing and, learning so much on a day-to-day basis, I would say, at least for myself, that I feel like, okay, how do I just, put it in a nutshell? Because then, we're lifelong learners, right? I mean, so essentially, yes. And in regards to the subject that I'll be speaking about today, which is conscious parenting, it's a subject that's been very close to my heart. And the more that I studied human behavior, the more that I understood, what research is saying about child development, the more that, I just kept going deeper in this field.
Yeah, so we're excited to talk about the topic of conscious parenting. One, because there's so many different, I think, modalities when it comes to parenting, where parents are flooded with, you need to show up this way and make sure to do this and don't do that. And this is healthy for a child, this is not. There's a lot of, I think, polarization in the conversation of what's, quote, right and what's wrong when it comes to parenting and what's helpful to a child and what's not. And so I like this idea of conscious parenting where there's fluidity in it. And I hope that you can speak to it. What does it mean to be a conscious parent?
So, to be honest, when I reflect on the terms and I think to myself, okay, if I were to define it, for a layperson, how would I want them to receive it? And the first words that come to my mind are self-awareness, right? It has to be parenting from a place of self-awareness, which obviously is directly linked with, in simple terms, how well do we know ourselves? And essentially, what kind of a relationship do we have with our hearts, with ourselves, and with our inner child, right? Because we can only meet the child in front of us to the degree, at the depth and at the degree at which we have met ourselves and sort of, had that relationship and that dialogue with the inner child. And I believe that, yes, it's knowing why you made the choice to become a parent. It's knowing that this child in front of you is here to lead you into a relationship deeper with yourself that you didn't even know was possible.
That's such a powerful way to understand parenting, because I think, like being in my 30s and knowing about like what I'm supposed to be doing, right? We've talked about this before so many times. Society tells us a lot of times we should be married, we should be parents. And I know people that have had kids because society told them to, right? But have no self-awareness and no self-understanding. And their relationships with their kids are absolutely strained.
100%. It honestly, what you just said, it hurts my heart. Not from the judgmental perspective, but from that curiosity perspective that yes, every individual has been conditioned to make these choices, like you said, to marry by this age, to have kids by this age, to finish this degree by this age, to buy a house by this age, and all the checklists that the society kind of threw at us. And I feel like, of course, the rebels that are out there, right? It led us to gather the courage to question the norm, right? To question the conditioning. That, okay, if you say so, why? And who made these rules anyway? Right? Like there are times, even now, I mean, as a divorced Indian woman, and I'm open to that conversation, and I'm very happy to bring that dialogue, every time something comes up in a conversation with people. And I always say, did you ever wonder as to why is it such a taboo in our culture, or why is it that we're so uncomfortable talking about it? Like, why? It really baffles me, the shame that is attached, and that continues, right, in the narrative that plays on, like, the the inner monologue. And yeah, I love that you shed light on that fact that we look around and everyone has been sort of going on that loop of, okay, this is what I have to do next. Exactly, like a prescription. And honestly, it also bothers me that the thirst to learn isn't there, even in our generation, right? We're all 30-year-olds here, and I see that. And I'm like, wow, okay, I get it. You don't want to understand yourself better because it hurts. I mean, there's so much pain, and it's like a can of worms you don't want to open.
What's like hitting me so hard is that those can of worms then get projected onto the child because of the lack of internal introspection and the lack of looking inward to say, how do I heal these wounds that have traveled with me through time, and these inner childhood attachment injuries, and the inner child that's aching for connection and love and a full embrace. Because that's still disrupted, it then gets transferred to the child. I mean, I don't know if I jumped the gun here, but I see that as conscious parenting is doing the self-healing so that you can show up in a very grounded, healthy way for your child.
Yes, exactly. It's reminding me of something Dr. Shefali said, right? That raising yourself is a prerequisite for conscious parenting.
Oof.
That's linked exactly to what you just said, that how they say that we bleed on those who didn't cut us when we don't heal from those who cut us. And yeah, just exactly what you said.
Going with the can of worms metaphor, it's like you're just shitting worms on this like precious little thing, and then they're just covered, and then they have to grow up and figure out how to not shit worms on everybody else. And it's just this fucking cycle that, we get to decide to stop it. That's the cool thing about conscious parenting. That's the cool thing about having you here. And if our listeners actually use the tools that you share today, it's like, you don't have to continue the cycle. You can do something different. we have freedom in that.
Yes, yes. And I feel like being a cycle breaker, right? I mean, it's an empowering decision. It's, you're taking charge of your life in a way that you've never done that before. And I truly understand that, when the inner child is running the show, and I mean, it is running the show in trauma bonds, it is running the show in interpersonal relationships, right? When we react. And I feel like one of the key skills that I keep even reminding myself of is, learning to sit with that discomfort. Really just like sitting with it. Like, okay, you know what? I wanted my partner to do XYZ and they are not doing it. They don't want to do it. And they made it clear to me that they don't want to. Can I sit with that discomfort knowing that they don't want to and they will not? And and how that relates with, okay, I want my child to be this or do this, but can I allow myself to witness their goodness beyond their behavior, right? And it's just that we tend to get so focused on behavior, which again, have it's like a reminder that is just the the layer that we see, and there's more underneath it. So
I feel like every sentence that comes out of your mouth has so much depth to it.
Oh,
No, truly, like we could spend an hour on every sentence.
no, wholeheartedly. Like you are hitting my soul. You are hitting my soul. And it's so transferable to my own life. I think to Polly's life. Like I was thinking, Polly, you've talked a lot about, your performance, right? And like, and being the best, right? And like so much of what I think Paulina and I relate to in this is like, if we're the best, then we're good enough, and that like, when we have children, right? When Paulina has a child, if I have a child, that like, I don't want to put that on them. I don't want to be behavior focused with my pure little thing that I created. I just want you to like, I want to be focused on your goodness, not your results, not the outcomes, like just who you are.
Well, and I guess to add to what you're saying, Victoria, I almost see it as the opposite of conscious parenting. It's unconscious parenting, where you don't have the awareness of your own wounds and your own countertransference that happens with a child. And so that then gets placed, or there's an interject that happens where the child internalizes the parent's unresolved wounds, and the child internalizes this messaging. And that then becomes their reality, or the way that they relate to self, others, in the world. And so when I think about what you just named, of a lot of my conditioning was, I am lovable and I am valuable based on my performance and my achievement. And I know for a fact that if I don't resolve that, and if I don't rewire that belief, rewiring the belief that my lovability is dependent on my value and my success, that I will inherently project that onto a child in the future. And that child will then internalize that as an interject, and that will become their definition of love, which is achievement, performance, outcome. And so when I think about this fabulous topic, if I were to be a conscious parent, what I would need to do is rewire my own belief system, heal the wounded child, or begin to help the inner child transform to believe that she is inherently lovable, regardless of her performance, that she is inherently worthy and valuable and yummy just for being her. But until I do that inner work, it'll be transferred to that future child.
Goosebumps, bitches. Yeah.
I don't know. Are we on track here, Garima? Like, are we understanding this correctly?
Yes, of course. No, I mean, I just learned that about you, and it reminds me of how they say that when we have to perform for the love, we couldn't rest in it. we couldn't rest in the parents' love because we had to be the parent pleaser, which is why we become people pleasers. Essentially, it's that belief system that that we continued to hold on to even in adulthood, that we have to be liked by the other person to to be worthy enough of who we are, like you said. Yeah.
When we perform, say it one more time, when we perform in the love, we couldn't rest in the love. Is that?
Yes, yes. We had to perform for the love because we couldn't rest in it.
Holy shit.
We couldn't rest in the parents' love. Yeah. And I mean, that speaks volumes to, how the conditional aspect of it. And of course, it's hard to give unconditional love to anybody. And I'm aware that that's only applicable for the parent-child relationship. When you have that kind of selflessness and that approach to it, that there's a human being outside of your body who has your heart, and I mean, you are consciously aware of the fact that you will be putting them before you, right, and before your needs, which is why, I mean, and we also struggle with no village at this point of nuclear families, which is why parents are burnt out all the time. But essentially, yes, when I say the conditional aspect of love, I mean that, like Polly pointed out, that when we had to perform, it was the condition that you behave this way, or you achieve this, or you do this, and then you'll receive the love. That you wouldn't receive it if you didn't behave the way that was asked. And that is, the key to remembering that is attaching conditions to giving love to the child. Yeah. Which is also their template, right? Like, that's what we remember.
But I think what's so important to highlight to listeners is that that was the work that the parent needed to do. That was the self-healing that needed to happen in order to not transfer that yuck onto the child. And so, like, conscious parenting is doing that self-work and healing and rewiring your brain so that you almost have an unbiased or a healed state as you interact with the child, right?
I mean, we're all a work in progress, and it will be a lifelong journey. We'll never. Also, it's interesting that you use the word healed, because of the perfectionist in us. We want to reach the stage of healed, right? Which is technically not possible. I mean, we're human after all.
Good call out.
I hear you, and I hear your heart, because essentially it is what we get stuck in, right? That loop of like, okay, you know what? I must do this, and like I must get to the stage to be able to be the parent. But yes, of course, giving yourself grace alongside doing the inner work. Sorry, I'm just going to point out, a brilliant quote that I love by Lisa Oliveira. And she says that self-compassion and accountability are dance partners. And I truly love how, that's a reminder every time if I'm being harsh on myself in regards to anything. And then, I remind myself of how important it is to offer myself that compassion.
Can I ask you a question about just in terms of being a conscious parent? One of the things that I was thinking of, because we just obviously passed Mother's Day, and I was thinking about the card I wrote my mom, and like my parents did the best they could with what they had. Like I truly believe that, and I do think a lot about parents that I know today who hate their parents, and for me, I believe that part of conscious parenting, and you're the expert, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe that part of that probably has to do with some forgiveness around your own parents, right? Like if you're living in this place of resentment, if you're living in this place of they didn't give me what I need, or they fucked me up, or they did this, or they did that. Like I wonder if that also transfers to yourself as a parent and then on to your child.
I'm going to say that, forgiveness and gratitude, I believe, are two things that can never be forced. And if at all, they are forced, then it's bypassing, right? And I mean, we do live in a culture and in a time when there is a lot of misinformation around this, when, we all see it, the affirmations and, practice gratitude and let's just forgive and forget and that whole narrative. And I feel like, it's not real. I mean, again, like Whitney Goodman mentions in her work of toxic positivity, right? That we live in a world that is obsessed with being happy and not keeping it real. So sorry, just to come back to what you said, that in regards to us reminding ourselves of, okay, our parents did the best that they could with the resources they had, with all that was available to them. And can I can I have that lens of empathy towards them? Can I think of how their parents were towards them, right? And all that they had to deal with, and maybe there were cycles unknown to us that they did break, right? We don't know that. We haven't seen what it was like for them, the struggle that they had to go through, versus us as a generation where we have options, right? Self-realization was not, self-actualization, sorry, was not an option for our parents' generation, because they were, in that stage of putting food on the table. There's more that we have access to. But in regards to, so many people and like friends in our lives who struggle with that aspect of being able to give grace to their parents, or forgiving, or even sort of being able to look through that lens of empathy, I believe that, even when we know that it's a journey, it's harder for some of us, and for some of our friends out there to be able to reach that stage, because of how raw the wounds still may be, right? It also reflects on, and especially like, the saying, time heals all wounds. Like I just cannot stand the saying, because when you dismantle it, time doesn't do anything, right? It just allows the, the it's the inner work that helps integrate, right, all that there is to work on. Time essentially is just I mean, I've seen people with 20-year-old wounds, right, as raw as they were.
I want to take a quick pause to talk about our sponsor, a company called BetterHelp. It's an online therapy platform where all the therapists are licensed and accredited professionals. It's affordable, you pay a low flat fee for therapy with your therapist, and it's convenient. Do it at your own time and at your own pace, and you can communicate with your therapist as much as you want and whenever you feel is needed. And more importantly, it's effective. Thousands of people have benefited from therapy using BetterHelp, and we're really grateful to offer all of our listeners 10% off your first month. So if you're interested in receiving therapy ASAP, click the link in our show notes and you can get started. And you get to save money.
If people are listening, well, they are listening, and they and they have this like epiphany of, I want to try to be a conscious parent. What are ways that a parent could start embodying this practice and start to apply it? We in our episodes, we like tangible tools where people can walk away and apply it instantly.
So I believe that journaling is one tool that comes to my mind when it comes to rewiring, and also the concept of future self journaling, right? When we are able to, and I completely understand that it's, journaling is not a practice that everyone manages to get to. There's a lot of mental resistance. There's that chatter of, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow, and like, when you're able to sit with that egoic voice and sort of allow it to say what it has to, right? Again, the egoic voice in us, it's just doing its job to keep us safe, because of course anything familiar to the brain is safe, and because journaling would be a new practice, so for the mind it's a threat and it's danger. And the more we're able to have a dialogue with that voice in a way that it's able to sort of, when we're able to validate it, I find this interesting, because when we're able to validate the voice in us, we will also be able to validate the child in front of us in regards to anything that comes up for them, right? That's uncomfortable for us. But to come back to your question, journaling, I believe, is a powerful tool in terms of being able to rewire those patterns, especially when we know, right? We've identified our triggers being, in a moment when we know that we are reenacting and we are back to the past in a particular moment, that we've lost, control of the moment or consciousness in that moment. And this is something that personally helped me when I started to make a note of my triggers. Okay, you know what? This is something I've been noticing. It's happened a couple of times, and I don't have to decode it exactly as to when it originated. But if I know that this is something I have to work on, what am I going to do to, as a strategy the next time that it happens? So journaling is one tool. Another thing is working with the inner child, right? Which I believe is key. Any parent who is wanting, or has gotten that calling, right, to go on this path of breaking the cycle, of doing better because you know better, that relationship with their inner child is everything. When you're able to offer compassion to your inner child, that's when you'll be able to offer it to the child in front of you.
Everything you're saying, right? I feel like what you're saying, right, is so poignant and so beautiful, because it's so obvious, right? Like, it's so obvious. Of course, know your inner child, understand your inner child, bring compassion, let them be angry, let them be sad, let them be scared, and then transfer that to the child in front of you. Like, how do we overcomplicate everything as humans? We just go through these schemes and rabbit holes and mazes. And it's like, just listen to your wounded little girl, your wounded little baby, and then bring that compassion forward to the thing that you created.
100%.
Duh, motherfuckers. What the fuck?
You say that, it reminds me of a parent I was speaking to recently, and when I brought this to their attention, and I said that, when was the last time that you spoke to your, I took their nickname, right, and I said, when was the last time that you spoke to the little one inside you kindly? And she was just of course reflecting and wondering, and I wanted her to, and she said, you know what, Garima, I just can't go there, right? I don't want to. And it gave me the understanding that this person has a part of them that wants to have that relationship with their inner child. But there's another part of them that's too scared, that doesn't know what the inner child might say, and they don't want to hear it, right? And yeah, I feel like it's so fascinating to me, every time I reflect on us human beings, on this temporary journey on this planet. We've all come here for a short while. We forget the purpose of being alive sometimes. And like, the more I think about it, I'm like, we're a dot in the universe. And we just get so stuck in a loop. We forget, like, the bigger picture here.
We were on vacation, Paulina and I and a couple of our friends, and I was staring at the ocean, and I found this little spot on the beach, and I was like, this is mine, and then I was like, none of this is mine. So it was like that. It was just such a
So deep.
Yeah, I'm so deep. But it's true. It's like, and then I think, to your point, it's like we have a short time on this planet. We are on a temporary journey. And so to bring the most self-awareness, the most self-compassion, the most self-love to ourselves allows us to give that to the people around us, our children, our friends, our partners, our parents. It's a powerful way to live.
And, what you just said also brings up something in my mind in regards to being able to, give compliments to people. This is another thing that I've noticed, that we can't possibly give, a kind, compliment or offer kind words to say a stranger or anybody for that matter in our life if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves. It's so interesting. Like when I generally look around and when I see anybody struggling with, just complimenting a stranger, like, okay, I do that sometimes, and my husband would just look at me like, okay, like, why did you do that? And I'd be like, I wanted to add to that person's day. Like, you don't know how they might feel. What if they were having, I don't know, a shitty day, and they were like, oh, okay, my hair looks good, like, or anything for that matter.
The best feeling.
And I feel like that sort of, started to happen more often when your own self-talk was worked on, right? Like when you've spoken to yourself a certain way, when you've spoken to yourself not just kindly, but also in a compassionate way. And then, of course, it's the spilling over, right? The overflow of the cup, because you've been able to fill your cup enough. And then you were able to offer it to someone else.
I'm thinking about the inner child, and this is so really powerful for me that you're bringing it up as a tangible tool, because I've been working insanely hard on trying to connect to my inner child, like the hardest I've ever worked. The hardest I think I've ever worked to try to be with her, to give her love unconditionally, to help her understand that she is enough and that she is inherently wonderful and valuable without any conditions or performance or achievement. And it's a journey. And I know that is setting me up to be a conscious parent when I do get pregnant in the future. So I say all of that because I just feel really confident and solid that as I continue to develop the relationship with her, and as I continue to tend and nurture her, I know that I will be able to be a better parent to that future child. And I know that I will transfer a lot less yuck to that future child just by having a better relationship with my inner child. And that's become very, it can't be ignored anymore. And I'm glad that that's a tool that we're giving everyone.
Oh, I just got goosebumps in Paulina's words, I got goose pimples on my puss.
Sorry, I'm just sending a hug to from the little Garima to the little Polly in you. Yeah.
Oh.
She loves that. Thank you.
For whenever we meet. Yes.
Yes. Whenever you travel to the Big Apple, but that would mean New York. I just mean the US of A. When you come here, you'll come to Chicago.
Let's go to India.
I really want to go to India. That's on my list.
Shit talking shrinks go to India. Let's go.
That would be amazing.
So I used to have a different Instagram account, and there was a video that I posted of breathing, and it like blew up in India. It was really fun.
Really?
Yes. And I had so many messages from Indian men. It was hilarious. And I guess I'm not actually famous, but if I were to be famous, it would be in India.
No, but I'm gonna say sorry on behalf of how. No, it's very sad. It's there's so much. I have no context, obviously. I have no knowledge of the video that you're referring to, and I have zero idea of the story. But the moment you say Indian men, yeah.
There is a stereotype of like Indian men in the DMs. It's crazy. It's completely unhinged. It makes me think that it's like a bot problem. Like there is no way that it's real. They cannot be real individuals. It's unbelievable.
She's like so shameful of Indian men. She's like, we should just keep them locked away in a box.
Oh, I'm dying.
I'm going to ask you. I'm probably going to ask you later about it as to, the context of the video to understand this better. But yeah, I just know how unfortunate it is as someone who's, seen not just the patriarchy, but like so much in this country. And it's terrible. Yeah.
Well, I came out alive and well, and all the DMs I got, I don't know if it boosted my ego. I don't think it did. It just made me feel disturbed. But we're here. Okay, so in wrapping up our fabulous episode, what is one additional tip or trick to help someone embody conscious parenting? And then we'll all gracefully sign off.
When you ask me that question, I want to quote Julie King here, who said that when you don't know what to do, acknowledge feelings. She pointed this out to parents in a parenting conference when she tried to, shed light on it with examples. There's another thing that she continued to say along with this. And I'm going to back it up with an example. And she said that when I can't give it to them in reality, I give it to them in fantasy. And she backed this up with an example of how a child in front of her who didn't want to go to school that day, and just didn't want to do what was being asked of them. And she sat with the child and she said, you know what? Let's sit for a moment and let's think of a school that you would design. Let's, try to absorb the moment of what would that school be like, right? How would it be fun? And what would you want to do in it, right? And just this whole narrative, she took about 5 to 10 minutes with the child. And she tries to give the example of how she could validate the child's experience and what they wanted to do in fantasy, which allowed them to transition to reality, right? Because she was not able to offer it in reality. And I loved how that was done.
My parents just chucked me in the fucking car. He said, you're going. It's like, you could take 5 minutes and I would have just walked right in.
Of course, right? Because we didn't have a choice. I mean, you have to go. You have to do what's being asked. And yes, so I believe that validating their emotion, their feeling, whatever is coming up for them is, again, it's going to be hard for any parent who's not already validating their own emotions and feelings. Because you cannot do it for the child in front of you if you're not doing it for yourself, which again, as a generation, we all know that, we have the whole thing of being well-behaved, and that links to us not being able to like ourselves, right? We were well-behaved children, which is why we struggle with liking ourselves. And the children in front of us, when we don't want them to struggle with liking themselves, let alone, self-love, which is a different step in the pyramid, the more we are able to validate their reality. They see the sky as purple, we see it as blue. Can we hold space for that? Or do we impose the blue?
Garima is magic, everybody. So,
Garima, thank you for spending your precious evening with us. It's probably now 11 p.m. And I want you to have sweet, sweet dreams and know that you changed many Americans' lives, many parents in America who are listening to this.
You changed America's parents. We love you guys.
Yeah, big, big love. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Big, big love.